Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second quarterly HCM meeting. This one has a good turnout already, so we're hoping to present you with a lot of useful information. And because it's crammed with slides and information, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to turn it over to the share team for their presentation.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the first thing I want to go over, I'm Jim Hightower on the share team. The first thing I want to go over is some functionality that we've had in place for some time, but you may not know about it, and that's to give employees access, view-only access to their timesheet. You may want to do this if someone else reports time for the employee and you don't want them to make any changes to their timesheet, or if you've got a timekeeping system or something that, you know. So this is pretty easy to do. All you have to do is make a small change on their time reporter data. And what you need to do is go to the time reported data, insert a new effective dated row, and then towards the bottom of the screen, you can see on the left side, there's a field called Restriction Profile ID. And if you were to click on the magnifying glass in that field, you would see that there's one option available, and it's called TS View, which means timesheet view only. And then if you save that, when the hourly security process runs, what will happen is if the employee has employee self-service access, then their timesheet will be grayed out and they will be able to view it, but they won't be able to make any changes to the timesheet. So that might be useful to some of you that, like I said, may want to give your employees employee self-service access, like seeing their pay stub, their pay statement, seeing their benefit data, personal data, but you don't want them to have access to their timesheet except to see it. This might be a good thing for you to use. So that's the first thing. Next slide. And then the next thing we wanted to bring up is to give you a simplified, you're raising your hand, Audrey, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to just interject here. If employees have that ability, more employees would have the ability to access their W-2s, because that way, I know a lot of people are not given self-service because they don't want them to be able to manipulate their timesheet. So if we utilize that particular functionality within job data, we would be able to give them self-service access, which would allow more people access to their W-2s instead of us having to print them and then mail them out. So that's something to definitely think about. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. That's a good point. Okay, on donated leave, I wanted to bring out and simplify the time reporting codes. I think there's some confusion, so I wanted to break it out into the two different sections. One as the donor. So the donor would have two TRCs. One is to donate leave to somebody, and then also to receive donated leave returned. In other words, if the donee doesn't take all their time, doesn't take all the donated leave, and you want to give it back to the donor. So those are the two TRCs available from a donor perspective. On the donee, it's a little more complicated. You obviously will have the received annual donated leave received. The employee will be able to see ANLDT, the donated annual taken, but they would not be able to enter any of the other ones. The donated annual lost would be used when you return unused donated leave and you return it to the donor. And then the last one is really only, it only should be used if central payroll were to tell you to make an adjustment. It's really for internal use only, but you're going to be able to see it as a manager. I'm sorry, as a uh, time administrator for the agency. Then we have two queries that are available. And this is not specific just to donated leave. It gives you all the donated leave balances. The first one is by employee ID, and then the second one is by your agency. And that's basically it for donated leave.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Can I just get a thumbs up? Can you hear me? All right. Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. So I've got a few quick items to discuss as well. So the first is the benefit service date. So if you didn't know, now you know. That highlighted field, benefit service date, is what the accrual rate for annual leave is calculated on. So new hires, no big deal. It populates that when they hire. You can just let it roll. But for rehires, and especially if an employee has a local public body record, you want to be making sure that that benefit service date is accurate. It won't update for rehire, so it'll keep the original hire date. So you just want to make sure that what's on that field is the correct adjusted hire date. So at your agency, you probably have a spreadsheet that will calculate the adjusted hire date for rehires. You plug in when they hired, when they terminated, rehired again. It'll calculate that adjusted hire date for you. If you don't have that, well, you're in luck. We have that posted on our Share Info Center. I believe it's under our Job Aids Benefits section. So you can download that spreadsheet. But also, just send us an email and we'll gladly send you a copy. So if you do have an employee that has a local public body record or a rehire that needs that date updated, it's a really quick and easy fix to update that. So you'll go into job data, you'll insert a new effective dated row, typically the beginning of the pay period. You'll use data change as the action, and then employment data page update as the reason. Then you'll click the employment data page, which is towards the bottom of this screenshot on the slide, employment data, and it'll bring you to this page. So then you'll just click that override checkbox that's highlighted, and then it'll open up that field to enter the date that you need updated. I think, are you asking, Alex, is that access to job data or the host piece?
Oh no, sorry, that was
Okay.
was we were discussing there. Sorry.
No worries. So we have a query, the NMSBN benefit service date. It'll show the service date for all active employees at your agency. There's a prompt. You'll enter your agency information, and it'll bring up everyone. So yeah, just please review these, especially if someone is a rehire or a local public body employee. And Audrey, do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I have a statement, and I apologize if you have already covered this. Payroll is seeing people that are terminating and have had their leave calculated incorrectly and are therefore owing back large amounts of monies to agencies. So it is because they were local public bodies prior, and their accrual rate was set at a higher rate than they should have received. So anybody that has somebody who came from a local public body really needs to audit these people's records to ensure that they are accruing at the proper rate. And if not, they will be responsible for paying back any over accrued usage. So please keep that in mind and make sure that these are accurately reflected in HCM.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to pause for a second. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? I think there's a Q&A option.
And Mikhail, let me just add to what Audrey Beck said. It is local public bodies, but it's also breaks in service with the state. So if someone works for the state, takes 2 months off or a year off, whatever, and then comes back, that date does need to be adjusted upon rehire.
All righty. Well, I'm gonna, let's see, there's Q&A. Says, is it up to the agency whether or not they have to pay it back once discovered, or is it mandatory? I think Audrey Beck, I'll let you answer that one.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So in the Q&A it says, is it up to the agency whether or not they have to pay it back once discovered, or is it mandatory?
It is mandatory. It's considered an overpayment of payroll, and payroll, you're supposed to pay out at what you're obligated to pay and not in excess of that. So it is mandatory that the agency attempt to collect that money back. Now, with that being said, the agency has the discretion to determine how they choose to pursue. But it would be considered accounts receivable payable to the state. And by statute, we're not allowed to write off any accounts receivable. So if the agency chooses not to collect it, they will be carrying that AR on their books for eternity.
Awesome. Thank you, Audrey. Well, that's the only question that came up. So I think we're good to go to the next slide. Alrighty. So this is a pretty quick and easy one. HCA will be mailing out 1095 forms if they haven't done so already. But also our team is working on adding these to employee self-service. So that should be available to all employees towards the end of February. So if you get any questions from your employees on how to get there, it's really easy. Just you log in. Typically you're at your employee self-service homepage. You click benefit details, and it's right there. You just view form, and it'll have tax year 2024 available. So coming soon.
And we do have a couple more questions. One is, there seems to be an inconsistent balances on leave between the available balance in share and the pay stub. Is this an issue with share HCM?
I would assume that if there's an inconsistent balance, it's because something has processed through time and labor that has not yet been calculated onto the pay stubs. Pay stubs are only calculated once, whereas time and labor has processes that calculate on an ongoing basis. So it's highly possible that somebody could have made an adjustment and time and labor had already calculated it, but it was made either during the off cycle or during payroll processing prior to completion that created that difference. You should be able to identify what is causing that difference and when that difference was posted in HCM and compare it to when the pay stub was created.
Awesome. And then I have another question. If a person is rehired, don't they start to accrue at the rate in which they left?
Yes, but it's so if they, let's say they terminated in 2020 and were rehired back in like this pay period, 2025, if you don't update that benefit service date, the system's going to give them credit for those 5 years they were working for another organization. So that's why you need to adjust that benefit service date.
I would also not rely necessarily on what is in the system because you do not know how the other agency calculated that date. They may have included local public bodies by mistake and thereby given them an increased percentage. So it really is something that each agency needs to evaluate when they hire employees and not try to just go forward with something that was already in the system based upon what another agency did. You are responsible for making sure it's accurate, and you do not want to necessarily rely on how another agency created that information.
Great points. Thank you. Okay.
Let me add to that and say that, if someone has had continuous service since their hire date, then you can be pretty confident that that date is accurate because it should coincide with their original hire date. The place where this comes up is for employees who either had that prior local public body service or had breaks in service with the state. And those are the ones that you're really going to want to make sure are accurate.
And then
Audrey, can you expand on local public bodies while you're
Sure. So at one point, when from 2006 until I want to say 2013, we housed local public bodies in the system. They were not employees, they were employees of local public bodies. So that could have been like counties, municipalities, the city of Taos or something like that. They were in share because they were given benefits through the state, through state benefits. And so they were in the system as an employee, even though they weren't an employee. And they were given an employee ID. And we terminated all of them going back, and I believe it was to 2013. And then those employees were moved over. That's when EasyGov or ERISA came to be. And so they started handling those people in their own system. And so we terminated them all in share. Now, some of those people do come and become state employees. And when you go to hire them, because their social security numbers were used for benefit purposes, they exist in the system already. They have an employee ID, and that employee ID goes back to that local public body service. You can see that it's local public body because when you look at their job records, it'll be company LPB. And you'll see that it's not there, they weren't with any state agency. But because they were hired on, any hire that you perform in the system, it sets that benefit service date to the hire date. And so for those people, they are showing, if they were from 2006 to 2013, they would show 7 years of service that they didn't actually have with the state. So in that case, that date would need to be, you would need to reset it to the current hire date if they got hired on as a state employee, so that starting fresh, they have 0 years towards the benefits accrual rate.
Awesome, thank you. We have quite a few questions here. So the first one says, we received an encrypted message from Anthony Brown at hca.nm.gov, re 1095C forms. We just want to ensure that this is a legitimate message. These emails are already going out to agencies, correct? I don't know if we have anyone that can answer that.
Yeah, I was not aware that HCA, and maybe this is new because HCA is new, in the past, I don't believe that 1095Cs were sent out to HR. They are sent out generally with a copy of the state calendar directly to employees, because EasyGov is the agency that does that. Or I mean, not the agency, but they're the entity that produces those printed forms and sends those out. I would definitely not open that and contact him and make sure that that is a legitimate email before anyone opens that.
Audrey Liddy and Audrey Beck, sorry to jump in here, but Audrey Beck, can we make a note of that and reach out to either Carol Lee or someone at HCA after today, and then just send an email to the payroll community with whatever the answer is? Because given all of the ransomware and phishing attacks we see on a daily basis, you know, we don't want people opening attachments left and right if it's not supposed to be sent to them. So if we just follow up for everybody on that, that would be great.
Okay.
All right. The next question, 1095C forms were received. Do the forms need to be mailed to the employee, or do the forms need to only be printed and filed in the employee file?
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Audrey.
Sorry, I was going to say, I am pretty sure that EasyGov is sending those out directly to the employee, so I don't see any reason why HR would have to send those out. But that, again, maybe they changed their process this year and didn't notify anyone.
Yeah, I think that's something that we'll need to reach out to HCA on as well, because we do not have information on exactly how HCA is handling the disbursements of the 1095s. So let us reach out to HCA, and I'll send out an email to the community later today with any responses that we get.
All right. The next question from Dwayne, is it allowed to include an employee's time worked for the state prior to the share HR system implementation for the benefit service calculation?
Yes. That should be included. All state service should be included in that calculation.
Awesome. Simple question. Next one, what is the difference between company seniority date and seniority pay calc date? And I'm assuming they're talking about these here on the screen.
We don't use those for anything. Those can be used in the system for calculations of things, but we don't use them. So it doesn't, there's no difference. It's just the date, it coincides with the hire date.
They're in the chat or in the questions, they're just talking about those forms. No question. Here we have one. Will there be a form we submit to the DFA portal with the instructions for recouping inaccurately accrued leave? So there is a form, and that's an hours correction form that is on the DFA website under the CPP page that you can fill out and submit via the FSS or the form submission system. And I believe that's all the questions we have.
Awesome.
So we'll move to the next one here.
All righty. Let me see, where am I? Okay, departments. So yeah, departments are great. State of New Mexico loves them. We almost have 10,000 departments on the HCM side. Who knows how many are on the finance side? But if you have a department that's gathering dust and you haven't been using it, and your agency has decided that you're gonna start using that department, process payroll, just give us, I guess, a quick help desk ticket or send us an email, so we'll take a look at it. Sometimes they need to be updated with current fiscal year information, so it's not very frequent, but time to time we bump into that. So if you have any doubts on whether or not set up correctly, just send us a help desk ticket to that enterprise support desk email. We also, there's a query for that. In gold NMS TL department ID by set ID, it'll list all the departments for your agency. And that's all I've got. So I'm gonna turn it over to Audrey.
Morning, everyone. So our team has started working on some query cleanup. This is something that we do routinely. We identify queries that haven't been used in a while or are used infrequently, and we delete them. We currently have over 900 public queries, many of which give identical information, or maybe they're just slightly different from each other, or they have slightly different prompts for searching capabilities. So we're trying to consolidate these down. 900 is a little beyond what we can manage. And what ends up happening is, because there are so many and we get requests for a query, maybe we can't identify one that already gives that information, so a new query is created. And so we're really on our side attempting to not do that anymore. And we want to consolidate this down and delete queries down to a manageable number. So as we work on this cleanup, we will be standardizing them and coming up with a query catalog as well, so that you will be able to run a query that will show you a list of queries, and hopefully you can find the one that is useful for you. So next slide, please.
Just a quick question. Do we have an idea of when that query catalog might come out?
No. Well, we have it written, but we haven't made it public yet. And that's just because there's not a whole lot of information on there yet. And this is going to be something that we continue to work on. It's not something we can dedicate 100% of our time to. So this is a project that is sort of something that we pick up as we have bandwidth. That said, we will probably try to get some of the more often run queries cataloged soon, so that we can get you it won't be complete, but it will be a starting point. And then we will add queries to that catalog as we standardize them or consolidate them down. So I would say maybe something working within the next month or two.
Thank you. And I have one other question. So there's a query that I know we got rid of, the HCM accounting line details that a lot of people have used. Is there a way for us to know, because I got quite a few emails and calls regarding that query, and finding out what the replacement was, because that wasn't listed like on the description.
It was listed. So if you open the query, which is what the directions say to do, then on the prompt at the top, it says it shows the replacement query to run.
Okay.
So you actually have to go in to run the query, though, in order to see what the replacement query is. And that's on the next slide. So actually we can, why don't we jump to that slide? Okay, so for frequently run queries, we will communicate when we will be making changes. So as an example, the ones that we started with were HR accounting lines. We had 14 different HR accounting line queries. Pretty much all of them did the exact same thing as one another. They were mostly misnamed. They didn't fit the naming convention that we use. And they were just producing duplicate data from one another. So that's where we started with this consolidation down. And in identifying all the queries that we're deleting, you can see on the description it says delete 221.25 and run for details. So what that means is actually try to run the query. And then if you go to the next slide, when you go to run it, it will give you this prompt up there. Notice query will be deleted to 2125. Please use, and then it gives the new query. So, you know, we won't be doing this for all the queries because, like I said, we do routine cleanup. Some, you know, if there's queries that just aren't being run, then we delete them after a certain amount of time. We're not going to give notice of that. But for these queries that are run frequently, we will be, or we're consolidating maybe 5 queries down to 1. Those types of things are when we will put a notice on there as to when they will be removed and what query you can use in its place. If you have questions about a query, like you know you had one and you just can't find it, submit a help desk ticket and we can assist you in finding a suitable query for what you need.
There is a question and I'll take that. I'll take this one. So they're asking if the employee name can be included on this queries, and the answer is no. Because these queries give you access to all employees throughout the state in order to ensure that your agency pulls all information related to your agency. So if you had an employee that transferred or an employee that, for some reason is working in another agency, in order for you to get their information, you would have to have access to that other agency. So because when you run this query, it gives you access to all employee information. We have removed the identifying name from the queries. The employee ID number is still there. And if you need access to a certain employee, you should have their ID number. But since there is so much access to this information, in order to protect PII, we are not including the employee's name with these queries. You will need to identify them by their employee ID number.
Great. Next slide, please. All right, so as I don't want this slide to become a little bit too confusing, because we actually just made a change to this query this morning because this query was giving us some performance issues. I would like to get it back to this, but we may not be able to. But I do want to still show this slide for future queries that we may be working on. So you may notice in some queries that we are going to be giving more prompts so that you can drill down on the data a little bit more. And like I said, with the HR accounting lines, we had one query that ran by fund. We had one query that ran by account. We had a query that ran by department range. We had queries that ran by employee ID, but it all provided the same accounting line detail. So that, trying to get rid of all of those different queries. And so the attempt was to give you multiple prompts that you could use to give you the data that you want specifically. So anywhere where you see a star on the prompt, that means it's a required prompt. And then anywhere where you may see a % sign in the field, that means you can use that prompt as a wildcard. So you can choose to put a value in that field, or you can choose to just leave it a wildcard, which means it will pull all the data. So I gave an example over on the right, which is if I wanted to run this query for DFA, then you could put in that business unit, but that's a required field. Also the from and to date. And I do want to note this is pay period end. So PPE means pay period end. I know we had an issue with someone trying to use a pay period begin date. It's not going to run properly. If you use that date, you do need to use the pay period end date. Department ID, if I wanted to pull all the departments at the agency that start with a 1, and if I wanted to pull all the expense accounts, I could put a 5 in there. I could also use other wildcards if I wanted to drill down to one employee or fund. And then once you click OK, it'll pull based on that criteria. As I just stated, we did have to modify this query this morning to take out some of these prompts because it was giving us performance issues. I'm hoping that we can figure those out and put these back in. But it just depends. This particular query, the HR accounting lines, is pulling from a huge amount of data. The table that houses the HR accounting lines is ridiculously large with billions of lines of rows. So we need to make the prompts and the query work to be able to be efficient and not bog down the system. And so some queries you may see we can do this on where we put multiple prompts. Other queries we may not be able to do it, and you'll just have to get the data and use pivot tables or tables in Excel to drill down to the data that you need. So more to come on that, but just wanted to let you know how these prompts are designed. Any questions on that? If not, I'll just jump into the next one. This is just more of an FYI. As of January 1st, we are hiring National Guard members who are serving on state active duty into SHARE as employees. That's so that we can give them W-2s for their service, and that their payments are recorded correctly in the system. What this does require us to do now is to use multiple employee and job record numbers. So, historically, if some of you who may have been here from 2006, when we had local public bodies, sometimes we had employees with a 0 record and a 1 record. We tried to get everyone down to the employee record 0, which is the default when someone's hired. But now that there's the possibility that an employee is a state employee and a National Guard employee at the same time, they will have to have 2 separate job records. So generally, that's still going to be that your employee is going to be on job record or employee record 0. But the situation could occur where they're hired on as a National Guard employee first, and that's on the 0 record, and then they are hired on as a state employee. That will need to be on the record 1. This is, like I said, this is just more of an FYI so that you know that sometimes employees now may be hired on EMPL record 1, or they may have an EMPL record 1 in the system. And really what we want you to do is to just remember to always utilize the NMS employee search function when bringing on an employee to see if that person already has an employee ID in the system. They may be insistent that they've never worked for the state before, but if they are brought on as National Guard and they, that's not really working for the state in their eyes, they may already have an employee ID in the system. So just be aware of that. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Share Team. We appreciate your input and the information you provide to us. So now we will go ahead and move forward. That's your cue, Alex.
Sorry, I thought I was already unmuted. All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. We forgot it was Valentine's Day. In case you forgot, you still have some time to go out to the stores, get what you need. My name is Alex Guzman. Many of you have already met me. I've already talked to many of you in the HR community. I am the payroll trainer supervisor here at Central Payroll. We're going to be going over a few things regarding Central Payroll. One of the new things that I'm really excited about that I've been helping a lot of you out with is the form submission system. So we're now a few weeks live with the form submission system, or what we call FSS. So if you see emails or that acronym FSS, that's what we're referring to, the form submission system. This has replaced our old system of emails when submitting any type of form to Central Payroll. So if you do still submit or plan on submitting forms to that email system, they will get rejected by our data control team, and we'll be asking you to submit that form via the FSS. If you still don't have access or you haven't requested access, you can request access via that website that we have on the slide here. That's platform.dfa.nm.gov/request-access.html. It isn't an automatic process. So once you request access, it doesn't mean you're automatically going to get the email and everything in there. It does have to be manually approved by someone by leadership at Central Payroll, usually me. If for some reason you send a request and it's been, a couple of hours or a day or so, feel free to email me or call me. Let me know that it's in there. I might have missed it. I usually go in there and check for new user requests pretty frequently throughout the day. But in case yours got skipped over for some reason, please let me know and I'll go ahead and review it and grant access if needed. Of course, once you're in there, feel free to check it out. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to me. If you aren't sure how to submit something or what something means in that system, definitely reach out. We also have a video going over the use of the FSS on our YouTube channel. Near the end of this presentation, I do have the link to our YouTube channel. And we're always looking to improve the FSS experience. The whole idea of this system is to make it easier, not only for us, but for you guys, for you agencies. And so any type of feedback on ways to improve the system or any little ideas like filtering or anything, there's been changes and there's constantly changes. Again, it being a brand new system, we're always improving it. So, and a lot of these changes have come from suggestions and ideas from the community, from you guys. So once you're in there, if you have an idea, please let us know and we'll see if we can implement that and, you know, send it up to the developers, which is RTS. So here we have a to-do list before we go into the next part. So to-dos, employees claiming exempt from federal or state withholding must update their W-4 by Monday, or agencies must change their tax status to single. Make sure you also review benefit service date of employees. Several employees are over accruing leave due to incorrect service dates and are having to repay agencies for excess leave usage upon termination. The longer this occurs, the more complicated the overpayment becomes. And I see a couple questions. First one here, if we need process payroll for 2 business units, how to request the additional access? You would send, that's a great question. If you do send forms for multiple business units, send me an email, we'll review it, and I can add that business unit to your access so that you can submit forms for that business unit as well. The next question, can they add a function that will notify you when a task is rejected or completed? That is something that we definitely discussed, but the way the system works, since it's not attached to a specific email, but to a business unit, like each business unit can have multiple users, and it's not attached to one single email for that business unit, that it's a little bit more complicated than expected. And so far, we've talking to RTS, there isn't a way for us to actually do that. We might be able to have, and it's something that we're still working on. We're constantly working on different ways to improve it, where on certain forms, we can send an email to a person at that business unit, but that's still not in effect. We're still working on it. Go ahead, Audrey.
No, I was just going to say that you can filter in the FSS on whether something was rejected or is completed. So if you should be in the system on a regular basis. This is not a system that you should sign into, submit your information and forget about it. All of the information for tracking of how that request is being handled is held in the system and viewable by agencies. So it's easy for you to see what is going on with the form you submitted, whether it is being processed, whether it's being reviewed, whether it's waiting for payroll to open and it's pending input, or whether it's been completed or rejected. And because we reject hourly as we're reviewing, if something is, you submitted a form and it hasn't reached the pending input, there is always the possibility that that form could be rejected in the review stages. So you should be checking on a regular basis what the status of your forms are, and not waiting for an email to tell you this has been done or this needs to be corrected. That is the purpose of the system, is to help eliminate a lot of the email back and forth that occurs, because our staff have all agencies across the state, which consist of over 23,000 employees that we deal with. We spend a lot of time managing email, and this system was set up so that we do not have to waste that time in managing email and can instead focus on ensuring that these forms are input correctly, are accurate, and employees are paid according to the rules that we have in play.
Thank you. I have another question. Are you automatically setting up the DFA and share teams for the new forms mailbox? It's not a mailbox, it's a complete separate website, but no, we are not automatically setting up anyone. If you need access, you do have to request it. I know that our developers, RTS Real-Time Solutions, have been teaming up with people. I'm not sure if it's some people at the share team and some people on other parts of the IT team. But I know that they do have some cooperation with them regarding some of the security aspects of this new system. And so they might already have access. I'm not too sure. But if you do need access to it, definitely send that request and we can grant you that access.
And you have to remember that the system that we're using to house the FSS is going to be in play across multitudes of DFA services. So I believe procurement, I want to say, or grants. Another area has started their usage of the RTS systems that we built the FSS in. I know financial control for vendor relations is going to be rolling one out. I know the grants is going to be rolling one out. That there are several different areas that are going to be rolling these out. So you have to actually request access to the payroll forms specifically, because we do not want people who do not handle payroll and HR in our system. There is way too much PII that is housed within those forms that we want to ensure that we are only giving access to people who need that access.
Hey, Audrey, let me just add to that really quickly, just for everyone's awareness. And then there's a question from Davila about MFA. So Audrey is correct. DFA as an oversight agency is going to be implementing multiple platforms similar to what you all are using on the FSS. It's going to be used for bonds, ICIP. It's going to be used for capital outlay. It's going to be used for vendor relations. It's going to be used a lot for infrastructure, the new infrastructure division for the state. So there are multiple platforms being built under this banner, but you all, or the folks, will only have access to the areas that belong to their oversight responsibilities at the agency. So when you request that access, your agency has to approve that's your job. You should have access to that platform, and that would be the only platform you get access to. In regards to the question about the MFA code, you absolutely will have to continue getting the MFA code when you log into these systems. There is entirely too much federally protected data being housed in this system, both on the payroll side, on the vendor side, on the capital side. And when we talk about PII, we're talking about people's social security numbers, bank account numbers, addresses, like the stuff that a hacker could steal and then steal your identity and steal your money as well as estates. So you'll continuously have to do the MFA, and you'll notice in the future there'll be more MFA coming all over the state for all of our systems, because there's entirely too much cybersecurity exposure to the state in our data. So while I'm right there with you, Davila, MFA can be a pain in the butt sometimes for all of us, but it's kind of a necessary thing that we have to do moving into the future. And I'm sure there'll be other security enhancements as we move into the future to make that even stronger, but we have to have that in place. So thank you for divulging me for a moment.
Thank you, Mark. We have another question regarding W-4 exempt. If the employee sends a new W-4 and is requesting to stay exempt, do we need to send the updated W-4 into DFA for approval? We want to prevent changing the employee from exempt to single if the employee is eligible and wishes to stay exempt.
And the key word there is eligible. There are very stringent rules in the IRS code which would allow an employee to be eligible to claim exempt. And that rule is they had to have had no tax liability in the prior fiscal year or calendar year and expect to have no tax liability in the current calendar year. Most state employees have one source of income, which is wages, and most state employees' wages are well above the standard deduction, meaning most state employees have a tax liability. State employees like to claim exempt to simply allow them to have larger take-home checks when they're not actually exempt. So what they should be doing is appropriately filling out the W-4, which means they are indicating whether they are single or married, and if they have credits for childcare, which brings them to a zero tax payment, then they need to indicate that on the W-4 and put that into the system as opposed to filing exempt. So generally, unless they are a part-time employee, there is no reason why a state employee would qualify for exempt, and they're not completing the W-4 appropriately. They're trying to avoid paying taxes because maybe they have $6,000 in child credit that they get against their taxes. Well, in that case, they should be completing the W-4 correctly and telling the system they have $6,000 in child tax credit, and then the system will not withhold any taxes. But the W-4 is signed under penalty of perjury, and employees need to understand that they need to be submitting a correct and appropriate W-4 and not just one to prevent them from having taxes withheld.
Awesome, thank you. So with that, I don't see any other questions. We're gonna go ahead and move to the next slide here. So we're gonna be going into task profiles and task groups and the impact they have on financials. So what are task groups and task profile IDs? This gives you a breakdown of how they're structured. So most agencies only need one task group. A task group can have up to 999 task profiles, and task profiles indicate where the TRC codes will charge. A task profile can have up to 6 combo codes, and the combo code creates the accounting stream. So this gives you where kind of the way it works. So it trickles down into combo codes here from task groups, then down to task profiles, then combo codes. Question, will we get copies of the slides from this training? Yes, you will. We'll make sure we send these out to everyone who attended and who got the invite for this meeting. So task groups and task profiles defined. Task group determines what timesheet is used, and the task profile determines the accounting chart fields that are used to charge a particular task for payroll. Task profiles are controlled by the task group. A task profile ID has to be assigned to the task group before you can assign it to the employee. Each employee must have a task group. The task profile ID is optional but highly recommended. If an employee is not assigned a task profile, the default task profile on the task group will be used for payroll. Task group and task profiles are assigned to an employee through maintained time reported data.
So let me give you an example before you move forward, Alex. On your task group, most agencies really only need to have one task group. For instance, DFA's task group would be DFA, and that would be the umbrella under which every DFA employee is assigned. That's our task group. Our task profiles, if you have a task profile, is built upon how you want the funding to be dispersed. So if, I'm sorry, the expense to be dispersed. So if I have someone who is 100% Gen Fund, that may be one task profile. If I have a federal grant that I have a person who's working half of the time under state tasks and a half the time under this federal task, then they would have a 50-50 task profile. with one combo code being charged to state general fund and one combo code that charges a percentage of their time to the federal funding. So when I look for a task profile, I could create a task profile, for instance, that's central payroll. I know everybody who works in central payroll has the same funding stream. We're all paid from 100% general fund. So I could do a task group of DFA and a task profile of central payroll, where all of the 12 employees that work in central payroll would have the exact same task group and task profile. But if I look at that task profile, maybe I want to change it from central payroll to 100% gen fund, because then I have a task group of DFA, and say I have financial control division that's also 100% gen fund. And I have ASD that's also 100% gen fund. I still only have one task profile that is now attached to all of the employees under those 3 separate areas. Whereas the budget people may need to have a task profile that has more combo codes in it because they're not 100% gen fund. But you need to look at what your task profiles are actually doing, as opposed to setting up a new task profile every time you create a new job, because a job gets assigned a task group and a task profile, and several jobs can have those same task groups and task profiles that have already been created, as opposed to creating a new one because you created a new job. Thank you. Go ahead, Alex.
Do have a question from Crystal. Is it okay to use the position number as a task profile?
I would not recommend it, because when you use a position number as a task profile, you are pretty much saying that it's a 1-for-1 basis. So now if you're creating a task profile with a position number, and say you got, for instance, the 3 managers in central payroll, each one of them have a different position number. And when you assign the task profile, you would assign them the same task profile, but because it's identified as a position number, that could potentially cause audit questions. So I would give it a more generic name, in which case you're able to utilize it for a multitude of people. But when you give a task profile a job ID number, it's looking to create that one-on-one relationship, as opposed to a relationship of this is the job and then this is how we're going to cost the job.
Awesome, thank you. So where can you find your employees' task group and task profile? This method of finding it that I'm going to show you here is available to almost all people in HR to find the task group and task profile. You can also find this and maintain time reporter data, but I know that's a little bit more limited. So this way, you know, no matter who you are in HR, you should be able to find this information. So in HCM, you will go into job data and then input your employee's ID. On the landing page in job data, you'll see a link near the bottom that says employment data. You want to go ahead and click on that, and that'll take you to this screen that shows more information on the employee's information. We saw this earlier in one of the share slides. And that gives you that benefit service state and a little bit more information. You also see a blue link here that says time reporter data. And before I move on, I have a question. I want to make sure we answer this. We have some old inactive task profiles with position numbers on them. Can we work with someone to clear them out?
Not only can you, we would be more than happy and grateful if you did. Yes, if you reach out to the share team can assist you in cleaning up a lot of the inactive old information that is in the system. And that really is our goal, is to get rid of a lot of the old non-usable information, because it creates a drag on the system when we're processing payroll to have to go through everything that is considered active, even though nobody is assigned to it or is using it. And so, yes, we do recommend that you do cleanup and you work with the share team to walk you through what needs to be done in order to eliminate those inactive or non-used task profiles.
Great question. So going back to where to find it. So once you click time reporter data, you get a pop-up window that says time and labor data. Here you're going to find quite a bit of information. So you'll see the work group, the task group, and task profile ID. This is where once you get this information, you're able to use a different screen in Share in HCM to get more information on task profile. And we'll go through that here. So if you want to get the combo codes that are in that task profile, you'll go to task profile ID, give you the navigation path within HCM, where to find that. So you go into the menu, setup HCM, product related, time and labor, task configurations, and then finally task profile. And that's what this screen will look like. So you'll see I used this task profile from this employee here, and I can type it in. This is also the screen, and we won't go into that here. And of course, I offer training in case you needed help on creating a new task profile. This is also the screen that you would use to create a new task profile. But if you're searching for an existing task profile and the information attached to it, this is where you would go. So you'd enter that task profile ID, hit search, and it would bring you to this screen here.
Alex, can you go back to the other screen for a moment?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So here is where this may be a job. This may be a job number and a lot of the ones that we have as task profiles are job numbers. But this search will not tell you if you've already created a task profile that you could potentially reuse. So if this task profile was, instead of this job number, 100% Gen Fund, and you knew that this person was going to be 100% Gen Fund, you could do the search by that name and it would tell you you've already got a task profile created. You don't need to create a new one. So that's why I'm saying we really don't want to use job numbers for the task profile. We want it to be a descriptor that is more indicative of what the task profile is doing. And what the task profile does is it assigns the cost allocation. So if it's 100% Gen Fund, I would recommend doing 100% Gen Fund, or 50-50 Gen Fund federal grant, or I don't know, if you have a USAID grant, 100% USAID, or whatever the actual costing is in the task profile ID, as opposed to just a number that doesn't really tell you anything when you search for it. So you may have several task profile IDs that are set up as job IDs that are exactly the same thing, and you don't know it because of the way you have built your task profiles.
Awesome, thank you. So once you click on that link or hit search, it'll bring up your window for the task profile. This will also show you, on here you have 3 different tabs. The default tab is going to be the allocation information. You want to click on chart fields, and this will show you the combination codes or combination code or combo code that is attached to this task profile. And here you also can get more information by clicking chart fields, and we'll look at that here in just a minute. So what is a combo code? A combo code is a key that defines a combination of chart fields. The payroll process posts these transactions to the general ledger, and the combo code identifies the chart fields to include on each transaction. A valid combo code is a combination of chart fields that are valid in the general ledger. So just brief description of what a job combo code is. Once you click on that chart fields link, it'll give you the information or chart field detail for that combo code, such as the fund, the department, the account, sub-account, report category, operating unit, bud ref, class, and program code, and a lot more information. So if you're having to look up what bud ref or class, which is very common, this is where you can find that information on there. So more on task profiles. Each employee has a task profile ID that will be the default chart field distribution for payroll, unless the combo code is overridden on the timesheet. Task profiles tell the system how to divide the labor costs. Task profiles may contain more than one combo code, but should limit total combo codes to 6 with a minimum distribution of 15% per code. A task profile should not be used arbitrarily to meet budget requirements.
So let me expand on this for just a little bit. So when you build your task profile and you have 6 combo codes, which is the maximum that DFA allows, 6 combo codes in a task profile, and the minimum distribution is 15%. That sounds like, we're not really breaking it down in depth. But when you look at how a task profile works in relationship to the TRCs that we code, every TRC on a timesheet is broken down according to a task profile. So if somebody took 15 minutes of sick leave and they are paid $20 an hour, that means $4 is broken down to within the 6 combo codes that you have in the task profile. Now, if you go lower than 15%, and we do have some that need to be looked at because they have a 1% in there. So 1% in a task profile on 15 minutes of sick leave would equate to a nickel that we would make a journal entry to post onto your financials. So when you see all of the lines on your financials and the small amounts that are associated with them, it's because your task profiles have combo codes with small percentages in it, which creates nickels, pennies, quarters to be posted as line items in your financials. We have, as Audrey Liddy was saying, an ungodly amount of lines that we post into Fin from payroll because of the amount of combo codes that we are using in task profiles. And every time, if you have a TRC for a 40-cent shift differential for 4 hours, that's $1.20 that now gets broken down amongst all of the combo codes that you have in that task profile. So you really need to understand how the task profiles and the combo codes generate accounting lines through the financials, because the task profile combo code combination breaks down every TRC in your timesheet and will create accounting lines associated with those TRCs for those employees.
Thank you for that. So rules to consider for task profiles and combo codes. In MAPS, PR 5.2, this policy establishes requirements for submitting task profile changes. task profiles will be limited to 6 different combo codes, and allocation percentages for each will be limited to 15% or more. So this gives you information that 2 CFR 400.230 Uniform Grants Guidance. It's up here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing.
I'm going to take this one, Alex.
Okay.
I'm sorry. So when you're dealing with federal funding is guided by 2 CFR 400.230 in relations to payroll. And a lot of our grants area will create combo codes to generate according to how they want the funding to come across for their grants, thinking that if we do it through the task profiles, that will meet the requirements of 2 CFR 400.230. Unfortunately, it does not necessarily do that because, as I stated, the task profiles will break down every TRC in your timesheet. When employees put in time, they put in their time that they worked in total. They don't say, I worked 15 minutes for this grant and 20 minutes for this grant and 30 minutes for this grant. They say, I worked 8 hours today, and we let the system disperse it according to what we have labeled their job duties to be. And when the managers approve it, they're saying, yes, this person worked 8 hours today. And most managers don't know what the task profiles say. This is how we're charging out their time. So according to the CFR rules, we have to have statements that say what we are charging to those grants are true and accurate. And a lot of the way that we are doing that is because we have attestation in payroll that says, yes, I work these hours, and the manager says, yes, they work these hours. But neither of those two know how that money is being charged out. So there really is no attestation that, yes, I worked these hours on this particular project for this particular day. That's all done system-wide, and we really need to look at whether or not what we are charging to is appropriate. You'll notice number 7 down there. Budget estimates alone do not qualify as support for charges to federal awards. And most of your combo code setups in your task profiles are based on budget estimates. They say, we have X dollars of funding. We know these people are going to be working on it. And we're going to say, these people are going to be working on it, and these people are going to be working on it for a certain percentage of time. But let's go back and think about those people that have a 1% combo code in their task profile. 1% of an 8-hour day works out to 4.75 minutes. Nobody can say every day I am spending 4.75 minutes on this project. I mean, it's just not feasible. So we really need to think about how we're using our combo code task profiles in HCM to support the grants side of the accounting system, and whether or not it is actually accurate when we are billing out those charges to federal grants.
Thank you for that explanation, Audrey. Do have a question. Who has access to the combo codes information? All HR employees, or does this access need to be approved? I believe the as far as the job data, getting the task profile, pretty much all HR should have access to that. The setup HCM side, I'm not 100% sure. I think most HR does. I don't know if maybe someone on our share team might be able to answer that, but I think most HR does.
this is Audrey. It depends on what combo code access you're speaking of. If you want to view combo codes, yeah, you can view those combo codes through the task profile chart field tab, hyperlink. If you're wanting to create your own combo codes outside of the task profile, yes, that access is limited. It's limited to a handful of agencies who have a specific need to do that. And that requires some separate training. So we evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. Now, we also have queries that can show you all of the combo codes that are in use by your agencies. And yeah, so I think one of those is listed there. Specifically, I think that second one maybe, well, probably both of them. But those ones should be able to show you what combo codes are assigned, and I don't know the specifics of those queries, but probably at least one of them shows you all of the chart fields.
I was muted, sorry. So these are a couple queries that you can definitely use to look up chart fields and combo codes information on active employees. And again, this deck will be sent out to everyone who got the invite. So you'll have this information, and we'll also post this on the Central Payroll page at the DFA website. So combo codes, more about them. How do combo codes impact financials? And again, Audrey has gone over a little bit of this. So HCM generates an accounting line for each payroll transaction by combo code. This information is imported into FIN by the created payroll journal. The more complicated the task profile, the more lines of code that would be generated for the employee. As an example, say you have one employee, one default task profile containing 29 combo codes, which shouldn't be the case anymore because it's limited to 6. But before, there was some that had up to 29 combo codes. One payroll cycle would generate over 300 lines of accounting on the payroll journal. So just to show you, and again, I know Audrey kind of broke that down earlier as well. So correcting errors, say on the payroll journals, Central Payroll will notify agencies by email of any payroll errors generated. Agencies will need to provide Central Payroll Bureau with the appropriate accounting information to correct the journal within 24 hours of notification. Additionally, the agency must correct the error in HCM prior to the next payroll cycle. If the errors are created due to budget errors, the agency will need to have the budget corrected or reclassify the expenses to a holding account, and then the journal the expenses after budget is posted. Most of the errors are caused by project costing associated with combo codes and task profiles. Agencies should provide Central Payroll with contact information for financial staff that are responsible for maintaining this information. Payroll journals are essential to the state financial accounting system, accurately reflecting payroll activity. Therefore, if an agency has the same errors for 2 pay periods, all agency stakeholders will be required to meet with DFA Financial Control Division and Central Payroll prior to the journal corrections being made the second time. So how can you research errors? Time and labor task profile IDs is where the accounting information is stored and is the funding source tied to the employee's time reported in HCM. So when payroll processes are run in HCM, it creates the NMS _PY _accounting line _details data in HCM, and that is sent over to the financials. So this is a query that you can use that I have posted up here. This is that new query that has replaced quite a few other queries, including the HCM accounting line details. The NMS PY accounting line details is a result of the payroll transactions processed in a pay period. It is the input file to generating the PR journals and financials, which then gets posted to the general ledger. And here's an example of what that query looks like here. So a lot of that information that's very familiar if you're used to using that HCM accounting line details, with one exception, as we discussed earlier, and we now remove the names of the employees on there, but the employee IDs are still listed. Updating task profiles. If you need help updating the task profile, Central Payroll has a task profile change form located on the DFA website that can be submitted via the form submission system or the FSS to make changes to a task profile. The form must be submitted at least 1 week prior to the proposed effective date. And this is where you can find, here's a link to find that form and a link to the form submission system. We also can provide more in-depth training, which is me, in person or via a video conference if you need more help regarding task profiles or combo codes. Some items to consider. Combo codes must be updated at minimum annually to ensure the proper bud ref and class are current. Effective dates will cause a combo code to fail if it is no longer active. Budget must be in place for any combo code used. Complicated chart fields require more oversight. Entering and improving time will not necessarily meet grants requirements for 2 CFR 400.230. A new task profile does not necessarily need to be created when a new position is created. We went that earlier in the presentation. Task profiles can be used for many employees. Do not create a new task profile if the cost accounting is already created in an existing task profile. Every TRC is allocated based on the task profile. If 15 minutes of sick leave is used, it will be allocated based on that task profile. And again, Audrey did discuss that a little bit more in detail earlier. A new task group rarely needs to be created. Any questions on anything that we went over in these slides? I do have one. How do we gain access? One person on our team does not have access to combo codes. Again, I believe Audrey Liddy kind of discussed that you would have to get with the share team to gain access to that. And here's some resources from payroll. And again, my name is Alex Guzman. I have my phone number listed up there. And as I always mention to everyone I interact with, feel free to contact me at any time via text. I have my phone number via Teams chat, email. The email that I have listed there is also the trainer's email, and that will get to me, Margaret, and our new trainer, whoever that may be. Also, I've listed the Central Payroll webpage where you can find a lot of the forms that you would be submitting to the form system. And then we do have a YouTube channel where this video, this recording will be posted. And we do have quite a few videos up there, including that tutorial on the new FSS as well. I believe that's all the questions. I was seeing I had another one there. Again, that's the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, now would be a great time. Thank you all for joining us.
And I do know we threw a lot of information at you, and it may not have all been absorbed. So as you review this PowerPoint presentation, if you have more questions or you want a deeper understanding to ensure that your agency, is actually doing things appropriately, please reach out to us. We are here to help you. We really want to get the system cleaned up. So we are asking agencies to really evaluate how they're using those combo codes and those task profiles when they're creating positions or bringing people on board. Because I know from looking in the system that we have a lot of one-on-one relationships where many of the task profiles are the same profile, but because we have tied them to job numbers, we can't easily say or find perhaps the task profile that we're looking for. So instead, we just create a new one and tie it to the new job that we're creating. And that's why we have such a large volume of information in HCM that has to be, as I said, when we process payroll, it has to process through all of the information that's in there to make sure that it is accounting for things correctly. And if we have a lot of redundancies or a lot of codes that are no longer used, the system still has to go through those steps. So the cleaner we can get this, the more streamlined we can get this, it makes our lives easier and it makes your lives easier. Because I know the last thing that agencies want to see is an email from payroll saying your payroll journal didn't post because. And a lot of those becauses are in relationship to combo codes either being expired, not using the appropriate accounting, or the accounting string that they are using doesn't have any budget in it. And so it slows the entire process down. And we have to wait for you to respond. And you may have to go to your financial people. You may not have the authority to even determine whether there's budget there or how to get budget there. And so it really creates a larger process. Also, when we get ready to do end of year cleanup, and some of you may have calendar year cleanup, you may have grants that operate on calendar years, you may have grants that operate on federal fiscal year, you may have funding that operates on state fiscal year. So, the more complicated your funding relationship is, the more you need to be cognizant of how you're using these particular processes. Because if you have built in 2,000 task profiles, you have to monitor those 2,000 task profiles whenever those funding streams change, whenever their funding time frame changes, or if they just completely expire. And you also have to do it in relationship to the state's requirements. So it really is an area that generates a lot of issues because of the way that we're managing it and we're utilizing it. And if we can streamline that process, I think it really will make everybody's lives much easier, and it will definitely make the system much cleaner. But I want to thank you all for your time. I know it's a lot. And do reach out if you have any additional questions or want any additional training, especially in this area.